All right, guys, good evening. My name is Stephen Rabinowitz, and we've been off for a few weeks. And why is that? Guys, we've actually, didn't want to tell you guys, but we've been all training to become Amazon production team for their playoffs. And you know what? I think it's been going real.
Oh no,
Happens.
that's
What,
priceless.
what happens? Oh, okay. I guess we got a little more to
You
work on.
you you glitched like Amazon Prime did earlier this week.
Yeah, I guess we got a little bit to work on. I'm Stephen Rabinowitz.
I'm Jay Kaplan, and if y'all missed it, the Sixers did actually advance. They will be taking on the Boston Celtics this weekend. Once again, it's April. It's the NBA playoffs. So of course, the Sixers are playing the Celtics.
And
I'm Anthony
Anthony
Strait,
Strait.
and
Yeah,
I'm
sorry
Anthony
about that.
Strait, of course. By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube or watching this live, if the Wi-Fi goes out or anything glitches happen, just do what we all do. Blame Trey Young.
Yeah,
You know what?
we're following the lead of our mayor. We're blaming Trey Young.
This is the On the Sports Lines 2026 NBA playoff preview. For those of you who enjoyed LaMelo Ball being a GOAT, good and bad at the span of 1 minute of game time, Denny Avdia becoming the king of Phoenix, and the time machine performances of Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Al Horford this past week, big news. Those were not even playoff games. They begin tomorrow and will prepare you tonight with the second bananas on contenders, players to watch in the big matchups this weekend, and of course, local shit. Speaking of bananas, grab one from the fridge and then get yourself subscribing and liking to our On the Sports Lines pages on Facebook and on YouTube. We're
Yes,
going to start,
sir.
yes, sir. We start local in the world's most famous arena, currently with the area's most successful sports team. And if you've seen the fact that all of our hockey teams are currently not in the playoffs for the first time ever, the Mets are terrible, and the Yankees are the definition of mediocre, that's not a high bar. Sorry, this is not a rant. After a 53 and 29 regular season, the third seeded New York Knicks are in their fourth consecutive postseason, where their opponents are the team that beat them in the playoffs 5 seasons ago in this round, and that's the sixth season seeded Hawks after a 46 and 36 regular season. The Hawks are now a team sans Trey Young, the man who has been a thorn in the Knicks' side basically permanently. But as the series between the two teams begin tomorrow, the Knicks look to make their first NBA Finals in 27 seasons after breaking their
Hmm.
Eastern Conference Finals list streak last postseason. Anthony, you're first up on the court. Give me a star watch for the Knicks going into their series against the Hawks.
Well, for those of you out there who don't know what a corner store is, it's these small stores that have really old products and they have something called that we call a bodega cat. So that's what I'm going with tonight. And yes, exactly. And that's what I'm going with tonight with Karl-Anthony Towns as my star to watch. And I talked about him in one of our shows after the All-Star break, going into the second half as a player to watch. And maybe I'll ask you guys, didn't he seem like he looked a lot more comfortable playing and more free flowing once those trade rumors with Giannis Antetokounmpo kind of went away after the trade deadline? And it definitely showed in his game. I mean, for the season, he averaged 20 a game, 11.9 rebounds a game, which is second in the NBA behind his teammate Mitchell Robinson. Um, and his shooting efficiency was over 58% from the field. 43% from the field was definitely a big improvement from the first half of the season, where he only averaged 19.8 a game on 46.6% shooting. And it also looked like he's gotten more comfortable in the new offensive system that Mike Brown put into this season, where it's more of movement without the ball, is more play quality talents playing on the wing. Almost similar to what he had in Sacramento as well, the team that he coached the Kings for a couple of years. He's shown more of a commitment to be more of a team player, finding other ways to impact the game, when not just as rebounder, but also being more of a rim protector and a shot blocker. Something we didn't see all earlier this year. We didn't see much of it all of last season as well when Tom Thibodeau was coaching the team. But also he continued to really improve and be protected in other ways. during the second half of the season, he became the fastest player to reach 16,000 points, 8,000 rebounds, and 1,000 made three-pointers, which is very impressive for a guy who is 7'1" and can shoot the three ball. The kryptonite, though, when you look at the Knicks and how playoff teams in the past, in the postseason in particular, have defended them, has always been putting a small player or a wing on Karl-Anthony Towns and kind of allowing their center to
Hmm.
be kind of a free flowing and free safety and the defense to kind of camp it in and out of the paint. Now the Atlanta Hawks do not play that style. Quinn Snyder kind of likes to keep things straight up, man to man. You don't see them switch a whole lot on defense as opposed to other teams. Aneka Okongwu has been a primary defender on Karl-Anthony Towns. In the three games, obviously, Towns has had the advantage. He in 7 games against the Hawks since he joined the Knicks, he's averaged 28 and 13 a game. Now, for the New York Knicks, and obviously Jalen Brunson is the guy. You talk about OG Anunoby, you talk about Mikal Bridges being able to be the wing defenders and being able to knock down those outside looks. Cardi Towns and to a lesser extent, Mitchell Robinson, the Knicks, if they have any advantage in this series besides more depth off the bench, it's the size. The Atlanta Hawks is one of the smallest teams in the NBA. For the Knicks, they're gonna if you want to keep the Atlanta Hawks from getting out on a run, who like to play on tempo, you gotta be able to control the glass. Quality time is going to be a big part of that, just now on the defensive end and finish off possessions, but also keeping offensive possessions alive and giving the Knicks second and third opportunities on those missed shots and those are being able to get to those long rebounds and attack the ball out to one of the other Knick players. So Quality Towns has got to continue to do what he's been doing the entire second half of the season. And when he's not scoring, impact the game in more ways on the defensive end, the rebounding, but also you are seeing more two-man pick and roll game between Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns, something that I think Knicks fans have been hollering at all season to feature more of that. I think that is something that the Atlanta Hawks is going to have to consider dealing with if they're going to put a taller wing defender on Jalen Brunson because you can't if Chris Snyder doesn't like to switch, you can't double team both of them at the same time. So that is a matchup, and that is something that the Knicks are going to have to exploit. But Karl-Anthony Towns, he's got to be the guy. He's going to be the X factor. If the Knicks win this series, he's got to be the Karl-Anthony Towns you saw last season, the Karl-Anthony Towns you saw 2 years ago against Denver in that dramatic seven-game cover behind series win when he was a member of the Timberwolves. Karl-Anthony Towns is going to have to really raise his game up. That's mean no more, and also the body language. I mentioned that when he's not involved, you see him sulking a little bit, kind of taking himself out of the game. The Knicks need to get him involved early, establish him early on in the paint, and that'll cause the Atlanta Hawks to kind of collapse the defense a little bit, force the Hawks to double team or play one on one. But the Knicks have to run the offense a little bit through Towns to get him more involved. That way, you'll see that on the defensive end on the rebounding side as well.
What's funny is the fact that is, when someone says incomplete on your report card, this is going to be the completed report card for Karl-Anthony Towns after this. Kind of unfair after 2 seasons, but by the way, more rebounds than Nikola Jokic and Victor Wembanyama this season, more steals than Evan
Hmm.
Mobley or Rudy Gobert, more double doubles than everyone in the NBA. This is, by the way, courtesy of Tommy Beer, a guy who runs a Knicks Substack. More
Okay.
assists than Anthony Edwards and Isaiah Hartenstein. I know. Yeah, thank you for the eye roll there. But yeah, these are stuff that I verify myself too. More points than Steph Curry or LaMelo Ball. More made three-pointers than Andrew Nebhard or Nikola Vucevic, and a higher plus minus than Jalen Brown or Donovan Mitchell. All of that stuff for a bad year for Karl-Anthony Towns. It's funny how bad years come into there, and he's going to be probably a second or third team All NBA player because he is one of the better players in the league. And put a pin in that thing when you said about him in that series against Minnesota and Denver, because I'm going to go back to that in a little bit. All right, Jay, you have the stat watch for this series, and
I do.
it has the Knicks starting five, and it's not the
Hmm.
greatest of stats when you look at it, sir.
No, I mean, look, we talked about this last year because last season Tom Thibodeau got taken to task by us and others for relying too much on his starting five of Karl-Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, and Jalen Brunson, especially since as a group, they weren't as productive as some of their individual stats would seem to indicate. That reliance bled over to the postseason, where they played the most minutes of any five-man unit in the playoffs last season, 335, of the 24 five-man groups that played at least 50 postseason minutes together. Their 108.7 offensive rating was 16th. Their 114 defensive rating was 18th. Their minus 6.2 net rating, 19th. Remember, out of 24. It was likely one of the talking points that led to last season being his last at MSG. That same talking point has carried over to Mike Brown's first season at MSG, as that same five-man unit, which was once again the Knicks' most used five-man lineup, was once again not one of the better five-man units. They played the second most regular season minutes, 541, of the 16 five-man units that played at least 250 minutes together, and they were just plus 0.9 points per 100 possessions better than their opponents over those minutes. Their 115 offensive rating was 14th. Their 112.8 defensive rating was 7th. Their 2.3 net rating was 14th. Bottom line, their regular most used five-man unit was one of the least productive five-man units during the regular season. Now, New York's most used starting five is the only five-man unit in the association that has played at least 350 minutes together and doesn't have a double-digit net rating. For comparison, the Hawks' most used five-man unit of Nickeil Walker, Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson, CJ McCollum, and Onyeka Ogonu, which played almost 391 minutes together during the regular season. They had an offensive rating of 123.1, a defensive rating of 102.8, to net rating of plus 20.3, and they were 18.8 points per 100 possessions better than their opponents over those minutes. So what to watch for in this series for me as it relates to this stat is A, whether the starting five play up to their individual numbers when they're on the floor together. They won their minutes in the Knicks 108-105 win over the Hawks back on April 6th. And two, how many minutes Brown gives the bench, specifically the usual trio of Miles McBride, Landry Shamet, and Mitchell Robinson, who figure to get the bulk of the bench minutes, and who he plays them with from the starting five. Here's some context for that second point. The five-man unit where McBride was on the floor with Bridges, Brunson, Hart, and Towns had a 132.9 offensive rating, a 116.6 defensive rating. That's a plus 16.3 net rating. They were plus 20.1 points per 100 possessions better than their opponents in the almost 123 minutes they played together. Second most minutes of any five-man unit. The five-man unit where Shamet was on the floor with Anunoby, Bridges, Brunson, and Towns had a 108.4 offensive rating, a 109 defensive rating. Their net rating was 0.6, and they were minus 4 points per 100 possessions, worse than their opponents over the almost 120 minutes they played together, third most of any Knicks five-man unit. The five-man unit where Robinson was on the floor with Anunoby, Bridges, Hart, and Brunson played just 70 minutes and 19 seconds together, but they were plus 23.7 points per 100 possessions better than their opponents over those minutes. They had a 133-point offensive rating, a 109.8 defensive rating, and their net rating was plus 24. On paper, the Knicks have the more talented team, but to quote she who shares my brain, who used to sit in Rabbi's chair back in the day, we don't play the games on paper. The Knicks will need better minutes from their starting five than they've produced over the last two seasons, including playoffs, and a head coach unafraid to let his top three bench players get some time with the starters when the game situation and or matchups dictate it.
Which is going to happen a lot more. It's just a question of you still need that starting five because it's a big drop-off, I think, as much as McBride has been up and down this year, and Shamet, there's also been injuries really a lot having with the bench. So I'm interested to see who the first person off the bench is also going to be, but I'm also interested to see, again, Anthony kind of brought it up. When Towns kind of gets into a funk, what happens there? Does he get himself out of that role, or does he get himself right into that role? So we'll see.
Yeah.
In the player to watch for the Hawks, they don't have the flash in Trae Young anymore, but they have the substance in Jalen Johnson. Here are five players who will never be in my kitchen: Wilt Chamberlain, Oscar Robertson, Nikola Jokic, Russell Westbrook, and Jalen Johnson. What do they all have in common? They are the only players in NBA history in a single season to average 22 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 assists. And him and Robertson, Jalen Johnson and Robertson are the only ones to do it under the age of 25, which is insane. The young forward is the only Hawk in franchise history. Jalen Johnson, one of only two players this season to have 1,500 plus points, 500 plus rebounds, 500 plus assists. He really changed the trajectory of this team. He had a triple double in the month of December of 25.8, 11.2, and 10.1. He is very much likely in the running for the most improved player of the award this year. He's only in his 5th season, and he has been just insane there. He was an all-star for the first time this year. He was a player of the month in the Eastern Conference in March, Eastern Conference player of the week. And Jalen Johnson right now is the best player on a Hawks team that has been kind of your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn. If you saw the last few games during the season, especially in the Knicks game in the last week of the regular season at Atlanta, CJ McCollum has actually been doing a lot of the yeoman's work too. And he's dangerous in this series because he's got the experience of almost everybody on the court. But what's interesting to see is the fact that in the 3 games against the Knicks this year, he hasn't been great. 19.7 points, 10 assists, 9.3 assists on just 45% shooting from the field. That's fewer points, a worse field goal percentage, and more turnovers in matchups featuring the team that the Hawks star will need to face in the postseason. In that game, in April 6th, he was 8 of 19. He nearly tripled. He was 8 of 19. He had a lot of defense holding him to that shooting total. Josh Hart being the main driving force of that. It's going to be interesting to see because the Hawks do not have a lot of great matchup advantages over the Knicks, but they pretty much Knicks won the season series this year, but they pretty much have played each other very tight. Knicks wins were only by 3-point margins. If you saw that game again back on April the 6th, it was a game where the Knicks could have easily lost that game if the ball just came out of Jalen Johnson's hands a little bit faster because it was on a
McCollum.
It was McCollum. Yeah. I forgot about that. It was McCollum who, if that shot just came out of his hands like 2.2 seconds faster, they would have gone into overtime, or they would have won actually, and it very much could have been a win by the Hawks. And one of the games they won, Trey was on the other side. The Hawks have been a different team. And Anthony, I know we talked about it before the show. A lot of the Hawks wins to get them into the area out of the playoffs, with the play-in. I'm sorry, which is something we haven't seen the Hawks be out of in a while in this postseason. But the streak came against a lot of bad teams. But the Hawks definitely, especially against the Cavs late in the season, looked like a team that was definitely deserved to be on that stage. And I'm very interested to see what Jalen Johnson and the rest of this team can do. And is this going to be another first round grinded out series by the Knicks? They've had them in the last few years against the Sixers 2 years ago and the Pistons last year. And this could be something that could really help the Hawks kind of get even just any boost going in, let alone they could easily win this series too, Anthony.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think about this, and there's 2 things I'm gonna be looking at. You talking about Jalen Johnson? Jalen Johnson is just like Karl-Anthony Towns in the fact that he picks up some cheap fouls. In a game against Cleveland, he fouled out with about 6.5 minutes left in that game. In a game where the Hawks could have easily won, and it was making a comeback just as he fouled out. And the question going to be defensively is, if you're Cleveland Snyder, do you risk putting Johnson on a Karl-Anthony Towns or Mitchell Robinson, even in a Hacker Mitch situation, and he risks getting fouls when you need him in the 4th quarter? Keep in mind, though, the Knicks have one of the best 4th quarter players in Jalen Brunson. The Hawks don't really have that go-to guy in clutch situations, and there's a couple of games this season against the better teams. They didn't quite know where to get the offense to go, to where the offense going to come from late in games. So that is another advantage the Knicks do have. Also, when the series shifts to Atlanta, that is a very pro-Knick crowd that we've seen in the last several games down in Atlanta. What happens now does the situation change when you see more of an 80-20 Atlanta Hawks crowd? I mean, we've seen it in Philadelphia, we've seen it in Detroit, we've seen it in past playoff series when Knicks fans do travel, in part because it's to be cheaper to watch the Knicks anywhere but Madison Square Garden these days. But and it's going to be interesting because I do think this is going to be a grinded out 6-game series. I do think the Knicks should win this series. Not a
Absolutely.
guarantee if they will. I mean, we see crazy things happen. Not too long ago, by the way, I mentioned Mike Brown's Sacramento's teams. They were a 3 seed back in 2024 and was upset by the Warriors in 7 games in that first round. Now,
You
keep in
get
mind,
upset by the Warriors, though, especially because of the
well,
fact that they were basically coming
look,
off of a play. They were coming into of a playoff
well,
run.
look at what we
Let's
got
be
to keep
fair
this in
here.
mind. Well, 2023,
In
I'll say,
2023,
but
they were
keep this
coming
in
off a
mind.
playoff. They were coming off a title in 2022.
Yeah, but also, you got to keep this in mind. It did take a 51-point effort by Steph Curry in Game 7 to get them over the top. But just again, Mike Brown is, I know he's taking some criticisms over the season, but this is a guy who led a Cavs team that had no business being in the NBA Finals in LeBron
That's
James'
true.
fourth season, led them into the NBA Finals, got them past the seemingly multiple time Eastern Conference champion and NBA champion in Detroit after they were down 2 games tonight in that series. And Mike Brown and he was on those Warriors teams that won championships as assistant coach under Steve Kerr. So the championship experience is there. He has the playoff mentality, and also keep this in mind. We saw the Knicks win a lot of games last season in spite of what Tom Thibodeau was trying to do. And if you go back to that conference finals, there's a reason why that coaching change was made. This is going to be a big test to see if the coaching change is worth it. If the Knicks do, hey, look, the Knicks lose this series, you expect changes. Will it be wholesale changes? No, I think that's overreaction because I think a
Yeah,
lot
but
of
I think
guys are under
there'll be
contract.
decent ones now.
But there will be some changes that would happen on 30 and 7th Avenue.
I will say this. Go ahead and Jay, and I want to kind of finish it up.
What's interesting to me is that, Jalen Johnson kind of got thrust into the alpha role after Trae Young was traded. And if you look at the way he has kind of stepped up, he's hit career highs in usage rate, in rebound rate, in assist rate. This is a guy who has stepped up and taken on the mantle of responsibility. And a lot is going to, how the Hawks go in this series is going to be very much dependent on how he shows up game to game. He's a bit of a matchup nightmare for the Knicks, so it'll be interesting to see who they put on him primarily. Is it going to be Anunoby? Considering the guy can guard anybody. So it's going to be an interesting matchup there. But what I want to see is he's had pretty much the entire season, to kind of get acclimated to being the number one option. You guys know the playoffs, the intensity, it's a whole different level of competition. The teams are better. So he has never, this is his first time in the playoffs where he's now going to be the top line on every scouting report. How does he respond to that? He did well against the Knicks in the regular season, but his numbers dropped across the board: points, rebounds, assists, shooting percentages, post All-Star game. So who are the Hawks going to get when the lights go on and it's postseason time? Because that is where reputations are made. This is where like you either are proven to be, the king of the jungle or a paper tiger. We'll see what happens. Knicks are his first real test.
We'll see what happens in that series that begins tomorrow, and on to some of the other first round series to watch. These three will also actually begin tomorrow as well. We have some star powers in these matchups, and it's so bright and hot that it's already registered heat warning in 10 states, but not Colorado, where it's currently 25 degrees and snowing and they're playing baseball. Fact. Let's take a look at players to watch from each side. And the Cavs and the Raptors, we kind of alluded a little bit to it before. It's the 4-5 matchup in the East. The Cavs were in the penthouse of the East last year as the top seed of the Eastern Conference. They went out in the semifinals, however, of the Eastern Conference. But their opponents, the Raptors, they were in the playoffs after a 4-season absence and a 16 game improvement from last year. So they are going from the outhouse possibly to the penthouse. Anthony is currently in the penthouse in Brooklyn, so give us players to watch on both sides of the court in this matchup.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the outhouse and the penthouse because that kind of feels like what James Harden went through this season,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
being traded mid-season from a struggling Clippers team. By the way, a Clippers team that I was able to see in person at the Garden prior to that trade to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And he's my guy to watch, obviously, for Cleveland. Now, before the trade with the Clippers, he was averaging 25 and 8 a game. However, with the Cavaliers, he has been more of a facilitator, which is one of the more overlooked aspects of his game. And look, all the assist numbers and everything, we always think of James Harden as a primary scorer. But with Donovan Mitchell on the team, he has kind of taken a step back and has been more secondary scorer, primary playmaker, which has been good news for Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, where you got a guy who just lob it to you anytime on an open look to the paint. Now, with his numbers, his scoring has dropped to 20 a game, but his efficiency has improved to 46% because he's not taking as many shots. Obviously, when you're more facilitator, he's actually kind of integrated his way very well. Excuse me. And the Kenny Atkinson's pass and the cut and slishing was more moving. Was just pretty much moving without the basket, getting to the cutting and slashing to the basket as much, and playing more inside outside, relying on outside shooting. And of course, it's bringing a little bit of one-on-one with Donovan Mitchell, who's one of the best players in the game without question. But since February 7th, the Cavaliers offense is ranked number one in the NBA, 122.7 points per 100 possessions, with Harden on the floor being the facilitator. In his first 24 games with the Cavs, they reeled off an 18-6 record. Actually did nip at the Knicks' heels for most of the second half of the season for that number 3 spot. And also, since being traded to the Cavaliers, he's ranked in the 91.9 percentile in efficiency as part of the pick and roll ball handling side, but also still maintaining his efficiency as a one-on-one isolation guy, 89.1% this season. Now, on the other end, the Toronto Raptors, Brandon Ingram's is the guy I'm looking at. He's coming off a season when he's averaged 21.5 points a game, close to six rebounds and 4 assists a game. Coming off a season where he was injury play, missed most of the year through the injury. And also a tip of the cap. One Eastern Conference Player of the Week to close out the season has the Raptors were able to stay out of to not only stay out of the playing tournament, but actually jump up to the 5th spot, in part thanks to
yes, the Magic
over the Atlanta Hawks,
and the terrible Magic performance on Sunday night.
The Orlando Magic, who by the way beat the hell out of the Hornets as we was going on the air tonight for that 8th playing spot, completely laying an egg against the Boston Celtics backup. But we'll leave that alone for right now. But Brandon Ingram, he finished his 13th in total minutes played, which is very impressive for Brandon Ingram. He's had a lot of injuries last few years. We saw the potential in his earlier years with the Lakers. Obviously, with the Pelicans, we saw how good he is as far as the mid-range game. He has improved his shooting from outside, so he's become more of a three-point threat. In the 3 games against the Cavaliers, I keep this in mind, this is before the James Harden trade when Darius Garland was still on the team, who did not play in any of the matchups. Is part of the reason why Garland was shipped out to the Clippers, by the way. He averaged 22.7 points a game to go with seven rebounds and 4 assists. Now, it's an interesting tidbit here, and this is for both teams. For the Cavaliers, James Harden, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen has played together in just 7 games for a total of 92 minutes since the trade in mid-season. In those 92 minutes, they've outscored their opponents by 26.5 points per 100 possessions. That's a very small sample size. Comparison, the Raptors start lineup, even with injuries, have played a total of 348 minutes together And they've outscored their opponents just barely by 7.5 points per 100 possession, a mark that puts them 12 among 19 lineups that have played at least 200 minutes this season across the NBA. Now, the question is going to be for the Raptors, do they have enough playmaking and scoring to match the Cleveland Cavaliers' offensive firepower? And for the Cavaliers, their defense has been just as middling as the Knicks, if we talked about this season. They can be anywhere from good to downright atrocious. And now, James Harden, his history does not include defense. He's never going to be in the
No.
conversation as being Defensive Player of the Year by any stretch of the imagination. On top of the fact that we have seen lapses, at least I've seen lapses between the Clippers and the Cavs, where he has flat out given up on plays defensively. Now, if he had a Pat Riley head coach, he'd get benched immediately for something like
Oh
that.
yeah.
But it's going to be a question of can the Cavs get stops when they need
Yeah.
to? Because in a close game, they got Harden and they got to run to Donovan Mitchell without question. The question is going to be who's going to be the go-to guy, and also an X factor is going to be Emmanuel Quickly. How healthy is he? Because he had the hamstring issue the last week of the season, and if he's not 100%, that's one less score and a guy who can go out and get his own buckets that the Raptors have going into this series. So it's going to be an interesting contrasted styles. The Raptors defense has kept them in games all season. Can they get enough offense to go with that? Can the Cavs get enough defensive stops to go with the offense?
The funny thing, Ann, is like you talked about Harden and like what's been intriguing to me is how Harden has changed his game, especially in the playoffs, as since he's left Houston. I mean, he had 8 trips to the playoffs with Houston. He averaged 28 points and a little over 7 assists a game. But he was averaging 38 minutes a game, but he was such a volume shooter. He averaged 20 field goal attempts per game. He shot just 42% from the floor, 32% from three. He could always get to the line, 87% on 9 trips. But it was always a volume shooter, and that was often the undoing of the Houston Rockets. Since he has left Houston, he's gone on to play 1 season in Brooklyn, 2 in Philly, two with the Clippers before this round of playoffs with Cleveland. And like since he's departed Houston, he's averaged only 19.7 points per game, but his assists have gone up to 8.5. He's played about the same minutes, 38.8. He's a slightly more efficient field goal shooter. He's still in the 42% overall, but his 3-point percentage has gone up to 37%, and he's still knocking down free throws at 88%. So he's gotten slightly more efficient. And I guess that comes from being able to match your game and fit in where it needs to be when you're no longer the alpha, but you are being counted on to still provide big offense in one shape, manner, or form. And we know the problem last year, and we talked about it on the show, is that the inability of Darius Garland to be healthy and be on the floor often enough with Donovan Mitchell ultimately became the Cavs' undoing. Harden's ability to stay on the floor and provide the offense that the Cavs were hoping to get last year from Garland will be a determining factor in how far they go.
Yeah, you know what it is?
Go ahead.
This is the James Harden we saw briefly when they stepped the Sixers. When they ran the offense, obviously through Joel Embiid,
Mm-hmm.
without question, and he was kind of the secondary guy, took a step back and kind of be the facilitator. And briefly with the Brooklyn Nets, when they had Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to be the primary scorers, and he would step back and be more the playmaker. This is kind of like he's been playing with a thumb injury too, so that might have him hampered his shooting a little bit. But I think his ability to kind of find other teammates and be more of a playmaker, it helps the Cavaliers without question. And
Mm-hmm.
we saw on the Christmas Day against the Knicks, and even during the first half, be very stagnant offensively and rely so much on Donovan Mitchell to kind of create for everyone else and be the scorer at the same time because they didn't have Darius going on the court at all at times.
Yep.
It takes a lot of the weight off the shoulders, but it's going to be on the defensive side because defensively the Cavs in the backcourt was just one of the worlds when you had Mitchell and Garland, two undersized guards. Now you have Mitchell and James Harden, who notoriously does not play defense at all. So that's going to be
No.
So it's going to be if the Raptors can use Scotty Barnes and attack those two players at some point, and he quickly healthy. Can he get that explosiveness on that hamstring and be able to exploit those mismatches?
Yeah, and the interesting thing for me, you talked about Brandon Ingram, and we've always known Brandon Ingram could score the basketball. But what's interesting is that he had a career. His assist rate was just 16.8 this season after one, two, three, four, 5 straight years of it being over 20 and 4 straight years of it being over 25. For his assist rate to drop that low when he has a history of being not just a 20 point a game scorer, but a guy who gets about 5 assists a game, that means he didn't really have much in the way of offense around him to be able to utilize his teammates. So as you said, so whoever if somebody else needs to step up and be a reliable secondary scorer for that team, or else their trip to the playoffs ain't going to last that long.
Toronto's 21 and 27 against the teams above 500 this season, and that's 19 teams in the league. The teams below them, they were 25 and 9, and that's where a
There
lot
you
of
go.
teams picked up a lot of their wins, and that's just one of the cases too. All right,
Yep.
Jay, you hate doing this. I know you hate me doing this, but I have to because it's literally the story for me. Spoiler alert, trigger warning. I'm going to mention your players to watch in this open really quick as the
Go for
Lakers
it.
and Rockets meet in the West 4-5 matchup and the first non-finals matchup ever between LeBron James and Kevin Durant. This is the fourth time they met in the playoffs and the only time most likely that they're meeting that's not for the Larry O'Brien trophy directly. Jay, these are the two players to watch in what will be a
Yep.
knock'em sock'em robot series if the Lakers have anybody left. I don't know if they're going to get anybody back.
He says as the theme from MASH starts playing in the background. I say it every year when we start talking NBA playoffs. Your stars need to play like stars for your team to have a chance to succeed. And the choices here reflect that, even they are somewhat Captain Obvious picks. We'll start with the West number 4 seed, the Los Angeles Lakers. And yes, it is LeBron James. Played just 60 games this year, 33.2 minutes per game. Career low numbers of 20 since his rookie season in Cleveland. 20.9 points per game, 6.1 boards, 7.2 assists. He did shoot 51.5% from the floor, little under 32% from three on, a little over 4 attempts per game, just 73.7% from the line. Only got there a little over 5 per game. In any other year, this would be the Captain Obvious choice because the Lakers offense started with, ended with, and totally ran through King James. But those were BL years, as in before Luka. In his first full season with the Lakers, Doncic was everything the Lakers were hoping for as the heir apparent to James as the face of the franchise, leading the association scoring at 33.5 points per game, along with 7.7 boards, 8.3 dimes, and shooting splits of 47.6% from the floor, 36.6% from three, 78% from the stripe, and leading the NBA in field goal attempts, three-pointers made, three-pointers attempted, and free throw attempts per game. Throwing at 23.3 points per game, 4.7 rebound, 5.5 assists season from Austin Reeves on 49, 36, 87% shooting splits. And James had been reduced to arguably the best third wheel in the NBA. The Lakers started playing their best basketball once James settled into that third wheel role behind Doncic and Reeves. From Feb 28 through March 31, LA went 16-2 with the NBA's fourth-ranked offense, 121.6 rating, and ninth-ranked defense, 111.4. Their plus 10.2 net rating, fourth best in the association in that span. But in their first game in April, a 43-point loss to OKC, the Lakers lost both Doncic to a grade 2 hamstring strain and Reeves to a strained oblique. They each missed the last 5 games of the regular season, and both are out for the foreseeable future. Indefinitely was the word Lakers head coach J.J. Redick used after practice Tuesday at the Lakers training complex. So once again, the ball and the Lakers' postseason hopes are in the hands of the NBA's ageless wonder. The Lakers obviously aren't the same team without their top 2 scorers. Yes, James has carried a lot of teams to postseason success, but it's been 3 years since he last won a playoff series, and most of the teams he won with were better defensively than this one, whose overall regular season defensive rating was 20th at 115.5. Losing Doncic and Reeves also means Redick has to move Luke Kennard and Rui Hachimura into the starting lineup, which hurts the Lakers' depth and into bigger roles, specifically Kennard having to take on more ball handling duties. And of the two teams, the Rockets have had the higher ranked bench this season. With that being said, the final 5 games of the regular season were the only games James played with neither Doncic nor Reeves, but he raised his game close to BL levels, averaging 23 points, 6.6 boards, 9.2 assists, shooting 54.5% from the floor, 61.4 on twos, 35% from beyond the arc on 4 attempts per game. His free throw shooting dropped to 68.6, but his attempts went up to 7 per game. Lakers went 3-2. James topped 25 points in the middle 3 games. And I'll leave this part of the segment with another stat that Laker fans can lay some postseason hope on. It's that the Lakers have outscored their opponents by 11 points per 100 possessions in LeBron's 528 total minutes on the floor without Doncic and Reeves. It's April, it's spring, and without Doncic and Reeves, the Lakers need every little bit of hope they can get, along with a vintage postseason performance from LeBron James. As for the Houston Rockets, the West number 5 seed, yes, it is the same Captain Obvious choice, but on 2 levels. It's KD, 16-time All-Star, future first ballot Hall of Famer, who is still playing at that level in his age 37 season. 20 in 78 games, 36.4 minutes per game, 26 points a game, 5.5 rebounds, 4.8 assists, shot 52% from the floor, 41.3% from 3 on 5.8 attempts per game, 87.4% from the stripe at 6 attempts per game. Damn, the guy can still shoot. And this is, at this point, this is exactly the time of year the Rockets got Durant for. In 170 career postseason games, he's averaged 29.3 points per game, 7.8 rebounds, 4.2 assists, shooting 47.7% from the floor, 35.6 from beyond the arc on a little over 6 attempts per game, 86.8% from the line on 8.5 attempts per game. And he has twice been finals MVP. Now, Houston surprised much of the NBA last season. Ime Udoka put his stamp on the franchise in his first year at the helm, leading a very young Rockets team to 52 wins in the West number 2 seed. But in the end, their lack of experience, 5 of their 7 double-digit scorers were also 5 of their top 7 players in minutes per game were 23 and younger. And also the lack of a legitimate go-to offensive option, especially in late-game situations, resulted in the Rockets getting bounced by Steph Curry and a veteran-laden Golden State Warriors team in an intense 7-game first-round series. Rockets returned most of that young core: point guard Amen Thompson, power forward Jabari Smith, center Alperen Sengun, and power forward Tari Eason. They added rookie shooting guard Reed Shepherd, all of whom had solid to very good seasons. All were double-digit scorers with points per game numbers ranging from 20.4 to 10.5, and were among the team's top 5 in rebounding and assists. But losing veteran guard Fred VanVleet for the season to an ACL before training camp even started, and veteran center Steven Adams to a season-ending ankle injury towards the end of January has made things much tougher for that young core and put more on the plate of Durant. It took a while for everyone to get on the same page, but the Rockets entered the postseason playing some of their best ball of the year. They won 8 straight, 6 by double digits before losing the next to last game of the regular season by 4 to Minnesota. Then they closed out things with a 31-point win over Memphis without Durant, Thompson, or Sengun. Yes, I know that's a low bar against the Grizzlies team that's been tanking for most of the season. But given the rest of the rotation and the bench players that are further down the pecking order, some extended minutes is always good heading into the playoffs. For Houston, getting Thompson, Sengun, and the rest of the young core more experience in the playoffs, and possibly their first series win against a shorthanded Lakers squad, would be a huge win for the present and the future of the franchise. And they'll no doubt have their moments as the postseason progresses. But it starts, and come winning time, it ends with Kevin Durant. He's the Rockets' best offensive weapon, and having the ball in his hands as much as possible, he has a career 30.7 usage rate in the postseason, gives the Houston Rockets their best chance to make a run that goes beyond the first round. Guys, this is the first ever postseason matchup between 2 players with over 75,000 combined points. And while LeBron James and Kevin Durant may technically no longer be in their prime, they're still King James and the Slim Reaper, and this is the NBA playoffs. That alone makes this series must-see TV.
I want to say this too, and for the Rockets, when you look at watching this season, and yeah, how good this team would have been if VanVleet had been healthy all season, or even with Steven Adams, because this offense,
Or even if just Steven Adams managed to play the entire season.
yeah, the offense has been stagnant at times, and even to the point where the ball just sticks with Kevin Durant. Like he
So
has to do
ugly. It's so ugly to
everything
watch.
for this team at the time. Look, part of the reason why they blown that big lead against the Knicks a couple months ago, and even a game against San Antonio, they blew a big lead, is because the offense just stopped. I mean, if the Reds start scoring, what's the offense coming? It's the team that has not shot the
It's
three
an
ball
ugly
well,
offense.
and
Yeah,
that's not shot the three ball well
Anthony,
this season too.
without a doubt. But I will say this: the silver lining in the cloud of Adams' injury is that it's moved Shepard into the starting lineup. And while granted, you don't want this kid playing major minutes, him moving in, playing with the starting lineup has actually improved the spacing on the floor. They're 17-4 since he moved into the starting lineup. That has made the spacing, things are less congested. The ball, Reed Shepard knows how to move the ball around, so the ball does move a little bit more with him on the floor with Thompson. So they're going to need to kind of keep that offense a little more free flowing. You're right, Rabbi. It cannot go back to being the stagnant, everybody standing around watching Durant play hero ball. There are going to be points in this series, and if they get past the Lakers, definitely beyond, where he's going to have to play hero ball. But you want that to be more often in the fourth quarter, where if the game is tight and they need buckets, he's the guy you can count on to get buckets or get to the line and knock down his free throws. But they're going to need that offense. They can't do that for a full 48 minutes. Even against a shorthanded Lakers team, they cannot afford to do that, because that will, if they fall back into that pattern, they're going to carry that pattern into the rest of the playoffs, and that's going to ultimately result in a quick exit, even if they manage to get out of the first round.
And even if that's the case, I mean, what Alfredo Şengün, one of their best players in terms of just like being a size disadvantage, and he should be against the Lakers. Look at the numbers last year against the Warriors in the postseason. 6 for 15 in game 2. That was a win, but in a loss in game 3, 7 of 18. 12 of 28 in the game 4 loss. In game 7, he shot 9 of 23. A guy who was shooting pretty much around 52 to 53% from the field during the season was shooting 45% in the postseason. And that is unacceptable for a team that, yes, it's Kevin Durant is the one that is the reason you got him, is for moments like this, but Kevin Durant needs to be a piece in the cog and not the thing that makes the wheels go round and round and round. If Houston wants to get through this series, and most importantly, to get through the big 3 in this conference of Denver, San Antonio, and Oklahoma City, because I honestly think that's where everybody needs to be aiming at. And I think the two teams here, even though they've shown real promise in that spot this year as the next team up, they have never been able, guys, to kind of separate themselves into that pack, and it's going to be very interesting what this series does for both.
Yeah, and Seguin's going to have to step up, and I will. You guys, you guys have seen this just as I have. He has definitely he's reached the next stage in his development. His shooting splits across the board have gone up, specifically, on 2s and 3s. His rebounding numbers will tick down, but that comes when you have, Steven Adams for the most part alongside you. His assist numbers are up. His turnovers are down. His points per game are up. If that carries over, it gives them a reliable, guy to run the offense through, especially from the elbow or in the block, because we know that Durant does not like to post up. He likes to be around the perimeter. You got to have somebody you can send the ball into just so that the ball moves side to side or up and down. We'll see how that spacing goes, and how the decisions that he's able to make with the ball in the post will have a huge impact on whether that offense is more free flowing or it becomes stagnant.
All right. By the way, Rabbi, I'll let you continue, but you mentioned LeBron and Kevin Durant's postseason matchups. Remember, LeBron won his first championship against Kevin Durant. Had to remember the Oklahoma City Thunder. Bronny James was a wee little lad, and coming into the series, they're going to be the first father-son combination to share playoff minutes together, which is
Yeah.
Wow. All
And
which
right.
is
it's interesting
amazing.
to see,
When you
and that's
realize LeBron James is younger than me, and he still
Ronnie
is
James,
good, one
yeah.
of the best athletes in the
Yeah,
game,
LeBron James,
and
yeah.
his 21-year-old son is now his teammate who's got big minutes because of the injuries now. And it's like, hey, look, your dad had to step into the frying pan almost literally from day one out of high school. Here's your Christian moment as an NBA player. Congratulations, you get to go guard Kevin Durant for 5 minutes.
And hey, that's how players kind of get their ceilings on there, and that's in moments like this. So it's gonna be a very interesting series, or it could be a very short series. We're gonna see
Hmm.
what the Lakers team with really LeBron James in the forefront does because of their 3 wins to end the season. They played shorthanded teams or teams who were not with their big stars. So this is going to be the real first test for what will at least be 4 or 5, probably a whole series if the Lakers get out
Hmm.
of it, of another LeBron centric team. Okay. This is round 3, ding, 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 of the Timberwolves and Nuggets in the playoffs. Round 1 was a 1-8 matchup in the 2023 first round, which the Nuggets won in 5 on their way to a championship. Round 2 was a 2-3 matchup in the 2024 second round. You kind of mentioned it earlier, where Karl-Anthony Towns did a defensive masterclass, and the Timberwolves won it in 7. Now, to your corners, get the towels ready. Here's round 3 of Minnesota
Ding
and Denver
ding.
starting tomorrow. And let's talk about who to watch for with Denver. I mean, I could talk about Jonas Valanciunas, who has been doing very good minutes with the second group this year. I could talk about Christian Braun and how he has developed. I could talk about Tim Hardaway Jr., who is averaging 13.5 points off of the bench. I could talk about Peyton Watson, who's made the leap. I could really to become a very good rotation player. I could talk about Aaron Gordon, who didn't really play a lot this year, only 33 games started, but is kind of worked his way back into the rotation really well. I could talk about Jamal Murray, who averaged only 2 points less than the number one player on this team this year. But come the fuck on. It's the Denver Nuggets. It's Nikola Jokic. He is the
Come
second or
on.
first best player of the team. What are we doing here? Yeah, no, this is pretty obvious. And considering the fact that the Denver Nuggets, who are going into this game with an 11 game winning streak, I think the answer is pretty much as even more captain obvious than the last segment. The Denver Nuggets, it's almost like you take Jokic for granted. He averaged a triple double again this year. Remember when doing that was just considered, oh my God, you averaged a triple double. Now it's almost just like blase, and it's probably going to lead him to a second or third place MVP trophy this year. Jokic became the first player to lead the NBA in rebounds and assists since 1969, 1970. And the only reason that's the case is that's the first time that they determined this stat was based on per game averages. They didn't do it farther than back then. So who knows? He might be the only player to do it. 2 weeks ago, he dropped 40 points in a game against Victor Wembanyama. A very good game on a Saturday afternoon. That was really a playoff-like atmosphere. We might be seeing those two again in the very near future. Jokic is on a team who is 21st in defensive efficiency, but this team has just kind of hummed along very well, especially over the last month. Again, as mentioned, he did a lot of this without Aaron Gordon pretty much for 40 games starting this season, and he only started 33. And in the 11 game winning streak, he has had 25 points, 13.9 rebounds, 11.6 assists, off 55% shooting from the field in the last 11 games that he played to end the season. And in the entirety of the season, he averaged 27.7 points. That's eighth in the league, first among centers. Duh, he is the standard at center. 12.9 rebounds, 10.7 assists. And for the second year in a row, he averaged a freaking triple double. Nikola Jokic is going to be in the MVP conversation again. He is just the only thing that apparently can stop him is any 65 game rule that ever gets around it, although he did go past it this year. It's one of the best players we've ever seen on an NBA court. You saw the run he had 3 years ago, a generational run that got him his first championship. 2024, yeah, hit the stumbling block and really 2025 couldn't really didn't get a lot going, but they still got to 7 games against the eventual NBA champions, the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they were up 3-2 in that series for the Nuggets after winning a crucial game 5 in Oklahoma City. You could say that really only the Nuggets and the Thunder and the Pacers got anywhere near breaking the Thunder's reign last year, lost the NBA. Jokic is going to be a key. As said before, there is no Karl-Anthony Towns anymore to guard him. So it's going to be a mixture of people. We'll talk about that in a second. And one of them just might be Julius Randle. And that's our guy here in the Minnesota side. And if you want to see how hard the task is, here's Julius Randle on defending Jokic and how he's going to do it. Probably got to call God and talk to him for a little bit and ask him for a few favors. It's going to be a tough matchup. Yeah, no shit. It's been an odd season for Julius Randle. He started the season on a high note, looking like a legitimate all NBA level player. First 20 games of the season, he was 23 points, 7.5 rebounds, 6 assists on 50.2, 35.6, and 81.3 shooting splits. However, after the All-Star break, not great. 18.1 points, 6.1 rebounds, 4.2 assists. Those averages, shooting splits go down about 6 points on each side, 44-9, 28-2, 75-3. When he got into the playoffs last year, in the first 2 rounds, he was spectacular. 21.7 points, 5.9 rebounds a game, 4.9 assists on 50.2, 38.5, 88. And his three-point shooting in the playoffs in those first 2 rounds jumped up 4%, from 34.4 to 38.5. He was only 31.5% from the field last year. With Anthony Edwards going in and out of the lineup at the end of the season due to injury, which kind of let the Timberwolves pretty much settle into the 6th spot, just like they had a year ago, by the way. They're really going to have to dig their heels in. They're not getting a Lakers team who they can physically dominate in every way, shape, or form like they did last year. They're getting a Nuggets team who is at their championship best right now, who is playing like one of the 5 best teams in the NBA. Again, when you see what the Nuggets have done, they have just been on their game, just finally getting the band back together because they haven't been healthy at all together the entire season. And they've got an almost shockingly healthy season from Jamal Murray, who's played 75 games. Who's going to be the guy, though, that gets to Jokic? Is it going to be Rudy Gobert? Maybe, to make sure that Jokic kind of gets his points scoring. If it's anybody smaller who's guarding Jokic, Jokic can be the playmaker that he was this year and who led the league in assists and rebounds. And honestly, pick your goddamn poison when going with Nikola Jokic because he's a killer who can kill you one of many ways. And there's a reason why he is perpetually going to be in the top 3 of the MVP conversations each and every year as long as he's healthy and as long as he's motivated, Anthony.
Well, I would say this: when the Nuggets have struggled this season, it is when Nikola Jokic has been faced up outside the perimeter and jacking up threes. And if you're Minnesota, you should consider playing a smaller guy on Nikola Jokic, and that's to keep him out of the paint. I mean, if he's in the paint, that's where he does his playmaking, his most dangerous, his most damage as a playmaker. Because you're worried about him as a scorer. He has great vision for a big. He can hit guys in the corners when he's down the paint. The offense has enough spacing to where he has more than enough room to find open teammates. Whereas he's faced up, particularly at the top of the key, it's almost like maybe as a big, you just fall into that habit of being able to shoot over a smaller player. But he's been a streaky as a 3-point shooter this season, as opposed to previous years in his career. That might be the poison you want to take it for the Timberwolves. Make him be more of an outside shooter than being a guy who's going to post up, get the easy baskets, get rebounds without even leaving his feet, even with Rudy Gobert trying to guard him one-on-one. But also, more importantly, you want to take away his options as a passer and make him be more of a predominant scorer because if he's scoring and being a contributor and a playmaker and he's getting these other guys involved outside the perimeter for wide open looks, it's going to be a really short series, Minnesota. And it's one of those situations where you're just going to have to settle on what version Nikola Jokic does the least damage to you. maybe him being a face-up perimeter player for a 7-footer might be the least damaging proposition if you're the Minnesota Timberwolves, because you're gonna do a lot of Anthony Edwards scoring in this series, but
You're
you
gonna
can't
need it.
you can't get Anthony Edwards getting 30 and 35 if Jokic is getting 25 and 15 along with 12 rebounds on a given night. So that is the kind of the poison pill you may have to swallow if you're Minnesota.
Yeah, like, guys, let me tell you something. I mean, obviously, everything kind of starts and goes through, and it's all, Jokic is the headliner, and obviously, of course, best player in the NBA. If he doesn't win MVP, I honestly don't. We may have to, change how the award is determined. But here's the thing that should scare the hell out of Minnesota, and honestly, the rest of the Western Conference. As you said, Rabbi, Jamal Murray's healthy this year. The guy averaged over 35 minutes a game. He was Denver's best three-point shooter. He knocked down over his 7.5 threes at a better than 43% clip. He was getting to the line. He's knocking them down at almost 89%. We talk about Jokic leading the league in assists at 10.7. Murray was still averaging over 7 assists a game to go with his 25 points a game. A healthy Jamal Murray should scare the living hell out of the rest of the Western Conference.
I would say this: if I'm the Timberwolves, hop in those two teams that the Nuggets played the Knicks and watch how they defended him, because they put OG Anunoby on Jokic a number of times in those two games, and Jokic settled for a lot of outside shots and say, you know what? I know we got Rudy Gobert, but we can't have this guy getting in foul trouble early in games because Jokic is just beating the hell out of him down the paint. So maybe it is a case of, you know what? Hey, Julius, you're big. You're big. Maybe you just stay in front of him. Just make him be an outside shooter. And he has been streaky this season out from the outside. So Minnesota, they have options. It's a matter of, do they use them?
It's really
just remember.
Go ahead.
Remember this, guys. The last time Murray averaged better than 25 points a game and 7 assists a game was the 2022-23 playoffs, where Denver won the NBA title. He averaged 26 points a game and 7.1 boards. So basically, if this regular season carries over into the postseason, oh, look out.
That Jamal Murray is what makes the Western Conference a big 3 and not a big 2. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Okay. We move on to the top title contenders in the NBA, the teams that we haven't mentioned yet, whether they be the reigning and defending champions. But by the way, I think SGA fans will have something to say about that Jokic winning MVP thing.
I know they will.
They'll have a little something to say about that. So whether they be the reigning and defending champions, a team that's built on the back of a generational leading tower of France, or if they're just the bad boys of 2026.
Wait, Rabbi. He's from France, and you like to go Leaning Tower instead of Eiffel Tower? What are you doing mixing your country big building metaphors like that? Come on.
Look, I would say this: with Wemby,
you're better than that.
Can you guys let me do my goddamn introductions instead of giving me on-the-fly criticism? Good Lord. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Let's go back to that part of the thing and go that these NBA contenders are ready to go for the Larry O'Brien Trophy, but they won't just need their stars to do it. We call this segment Player Other Than the Star Under the Microscope. Doesn't that just roll off the tongue, guys? Just brilliantly. It's just like you can say it perfectly. Okay. Anthony, you start with the top seed in the East, the Detroit Pistons. And while the Pistons have gotten to this spot on the back of a generational top pick in Cade Cunningham, who's another star. By the way, congratulations, Cade Cunningham. You're qualified to win awards. We appreciate your effort at the end for finally telling that. Thank God.
Glad your appeal got upheld.
Same with Luka Doncic, by the way, in the same appeal. Okay. Who's another player under the microscope who you're looking for, Anthony, in Detroit Rock City to be a star this postseason?
Well, look, anytime you have something serious like a collapsed lung, that could be touch and go on any circumstances. So it's good to see Cade Cunningham back and healthy. That's number one. But the caveat and the blessing, if you call that a blessing in disguise, I wouldn't wish that intro on anybody, by the way. Jalen
Yeah.
Duren has kind of emerged as a secondary scorer. That was something that we was as the Pistons, as good as they've been all season, you wonder if they had a secondary scorer. But Jalen Duren has definitely stepped up. I mean, he for the season, he averaged 19 and a half points a game, 65% shooting in 70 games this season. And you add into the fact that he's also the only other player to average 19 a game while shooting at least 65%. This is according to Piston podcast and Keith Black Trudeau. The only other player, a guy named Wilt Chamberlain back in 1967. Gee, I never heard of that guy. I wonder what team he played for.
I
What
hope
was his
there's
name
video
again?
on him. I hope there's video on this Wilt guy.
Yeah, he scored
Yeah,
100 points. I don't know what
I
team he did
vaguely
it
recall
for.
him
Jay.
playing here, but
Yeah. Anyway,
but I mean,
but
even
but
that was before my time.
before all of our times
Shockingly,
apparently.
yes.
But yeah, with Duran, he's fourth in the NBA in fourth, excuse me, in field goal percentage. He had a 4 game span where he averaged 28.3 points a game. He's actually has diversified his offensive game. I mean, he has been able to kind of expand his shoot range a little bit. You see him taking more outside shots, more of the mid-range game. He's not just a guy hanging around the paint, getting long passes and getting points like underneath in the paint, like 5, 10 feet away from the basket. Made his first All-Star team this season as a reward for helping the Pistons get the best record in the Eastern Conference. And during the stretch, during Cunningham's injury when he missed 11 games, Duran scored 20, averaged 23 and a half points a game. Against the Pelicans, he scored 30 and 10 back on March 26 to go at 7 and 6 on 83% shooting. First player in Piston history to achieve a 30, 10, and 5 game while shooting 80% or better. When you think about some of the great players that played for the Pistons, and you mentioned the Bad Boys teams of the 80s, and this is kind of the latest edition of the Bad Boy Pistons. That's a hell of an accomplishment. And he's gone on multiple streaks when he has averaged a double double. He recorded 41 double doubles for the Pistons this season. Now, the bracket, and obviously I thought we was watching the playing game tonight. The bracket breaks out perfectly for the Pistons. You're looking at an Orlando Magic team that isn't a great outside shooting team, to say the least, and almost mirrors you in the physicality department, just less playmakers outside of Vaccaro and come on, went blank for a second.
Franz
I
Wagner.
guess yeah, Fast Brian and Desmond Bain. But also in the second round, you get the Cleveland Toronto winner, and both of those teams have been seriously flawed, as I mentioned earlier this season. But you look at later on in a possible conference finals matchup, whether it be a Celtics team who we're going to talk about in this segment as well, whether it be the Knicks
No,
that
we're
come
not.
out of it,
No, we're not.
or
Not in a second. We
we
talked
said
about
this
it
last year, and then
earlier.
you never know. It's a playoff. That's why Lisa said games aren't played on paper.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, the X factors for the Pistons is going to be obviously Durant continue to be the secondary scorer, but also what this team does not have a great deal of outside shooting, which is why Duncan Robinson being healthy is so important. You take him out of the equation, they have even less outside shooting because so much of the offense was, especially much of the season, was funneled around through Kate Cunningham. Whether he beats the score, whether it's the playmaker setting up everyone else. So having a guy who kind of created his own shots and his own looks without Cunningham getting the ball to him is very important because at least it opens up the offense a little bit. But the Pistons' hallmark all season has been defense. Defense, rebounding, physicality. They have the bigs to throw at anybody, obviously. They have the other Thompson twin that has greatly
Hmm.
improved this season. So the Pistons are going to be a really scary matchup. But anybody coming out of that other half of the bracket in a possible conference final matchup, but even in their side of the bracket, that 4-5 matchup, whoever comes out of it is going to have to really do their homework and also get ready to get the ice baths ready, the ice packs, the massage tables. The trainer's going to be working a little overtime for those couple of weeks. You're going to need that because the Pistons are physical. They get out physical. If you can play the physical game, the difference is going to be Can they get consistent outside shooting through a 7 game series? We know 7 game series is game to game. Teams will adjust to what you're doing and take away what you're doing good and make you do something else from one game to the other. So that's going to be the true test of a Pistons team that, look, they break differently last year. They beat the Knicks in the first round. Like, you think about this, they outplayed the Knicks in 5 of those 6 games for 3 quarters. They just couldn't finish the Knicks off in the fourth quarter, which led ultimately to the elimination. What if they learned from that first round series? We saw in the regular season, but now the true test, at least the final exam, is going to be the playoffs in the postseason. What exactly did they take from last year, and how are they going to apply it to maybe being a championship game team this season? Jalen Duren is going to, his numbers jump from last year to this year. He's going to have a big part of it.
And Anthony, we kind of said,
Absolutely.
and Anthony, we kind of said it beforehand earlier on when we talked beforehand when we talked before the Pistons. They had the experience last year, but they're going from really step one to step three. Considering they didn't win a playoff series last year, they just got to six, and now they are definitely a very big favorite just to make the conference finals. And honestly, I think they're better than the Celtics right now, top to bottom. Watch any Knicks game that they play this year. They're better than the Knicks right now, top
Yeah,
to
they
bottom.
basically bullied
I
the Knicks in
They're
in
bullying
those
the
games.
Knicks.
Yeah,
So
but
it's gonna
another
be
thing is,
interesting to see what happens in this last portion of
yeah,
really the
and by the
Pistons
way,
final two.
how good of a job Jamie Bickerstaff has done with this team?
Really
I
good,
mean, the last
really
two
Right.
good.
seasons, he has transformed this team, and we saw him do this in Cleveland as well. But he has transformed this team to a team that we just didn't know what direction they were going when they got Kate Cunningham, to a team that is literally an imposing physical specimen of a basketball team that would make those bad boy Piston teams of the late 80s and early 90s very proud. And look, Detroit basketball is alive, and even the 2004 championship team. Detroit basketball is alive and well, and there's a reason why they're the one seed in the Eastern Conference.
Absolutely. I tell you this, Rabbi answered this, and it kind of jumped out at me about Duran is, this is a guy who 65% effective field goal percentage, led the NBA 68.8 true shooting percentage. He had the highest offensive rating on the Pistons. You would think it would be Cade Cunningham. It's not. It's Jalen Duren at 134. The guy's net rating is plus 26. His ability to be physical and give them a presence inside is going to be a key, no matter who the matchup is. And you got to figure that in a Eastern Conference that's not exactly overloaded with like legitimate bigs in terms of guys that where he has a matchup disadvantage against is there's not a lot of them around. So if he can do his thing in the post and Cunningham on the perimeter, this is a very deep Detroit team. They have half a dozen guys who average better than 20 minutes a game. Cunningham's the only one who averages over 30. So this is a team that isn't afraid to dip into its reserves, put them on the floor against anybody. They don't care who they're playing. They come to play, and they have very much channeled that bad boy Detroit Pistons from the 90s. They are the next iteration of that. They may play with a little more style offensively, a little bit, but they're going to be interesting to watch because last year they were not the hunted. This year they are, and that's a different perspective, and how they adjust to that will be telling. Because yeah, we're not really going to talk about the Celtics, but come the second round, and those two teams are likely on a collision course for each other, and potentially in the Eastern Conference Finals. Oh, it's going to get interesting, y'all.
One more thing about Durant, the fact that how much he stepped up after Cunningham had the lung collapsing. They only lost 2 games with him in the lineup, and he was just he really kept that team in that one spot, which is very impressive and
Indeed.
very good player. Want to see what the next steps for him will be. Okay, we move on, Jay, to the Thunder. And while they're not while the Thunder are pushing off their way to a repeat title. See what I did there?
Hmm.
Being led by reigning MVP Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Which player other than SGA is under the microscope, not the Microsoft, but the
Yep.
microscope in Oklahoma City? And be specific, Jay, with your answer because it could get confused with somebody else.
Yes, because as I noted in our pre-production group chat, I misspelled the first name of this guy, and shame on me, especially considering I spent a lot of last year's finals talking about him. It is arguably their second best player, Jalen Jalen Williams. He played just 33 games this year, averaged 28.4 minutes per game, 17.1 points per game, 4.6 boards, 5.5 dimes. He shot 48.4% from the floor, just 29.9% from three on just 2.3 attempts per game. His free throw percentage solid 83.7, but he only got to the line a little under 4 per game. He was tied for second in scoring with Chet Holmgren, second in assists behind SGA. When you look at his numbers, just that level, it's like, okay, per 36, 21.7 points, 5.8 boards, 7 assists per 100 possessions, 29.1 points per game, 7.9 boards, 9.4 assists, 51% effective field goal percentage, 56 flat true shooting percentage, and his 26.2 usage rate, second behind SGA. This is the Thunder's third straight season as the West #1 seed, second straight season with the NBA's best record. They started 24-1 despite missing Williams for the first 19 of those 25 games, then went 18-31, 13 in their next 31, and then closed the season on a 22-4 run after the All-Star break. Considering how up and down this season was for OKC with injuries to several of their key players, center Isaiah Hartenstein missed 35 games. Alex Caruso missed 26. Even SGA, the reigning MVP, missed 14. Chet Holmgren missed 13. It's amazing that they won an NBA best 64 games. Now, OKC's most likely postseason starting five of SGA, Holmgren, Hartenstein, Dorton, Jalen Williams played just 113, little over 113 minutes together, which was the third most used five-man combo in terms of minutes to play together, which tells you all you need to know about the aforementioned injury issues OKC dealt with all season. That five-man unit over those minutes plus 30.4 points per 100 possessions better than their opponent. That's the highest total of the three five-man units that played at least 100 minutes together for OKC. It was the second highest among the seven-man, five-man units that played at least 40 minutes together. Their offensive rating, 132.6, was tops among any five-man unit that played at least 40 minutes together. The overall team offensive rating, 118.7, was number 7 in the NBA. Their defensive rating, 103.8, was 5th. The overall team defensive rating of 107.7 was number 1 in the NBA. Their overall net rating of that five-man unit was plus 28.9, and it was second best. Their overall team net rating was plus 11.1, which was tops in the NBA. The fact that all five are finally healthy at the same time bodes well as the postseason gets underway. Now, Williams missed 49 games total. He entered the season coming off-season wrist surgery and had an extended stay on the IL due to a hamstring injury. And yes, big man Chet Holmgren stepped up and raised his game to a level that got him his first All-Star nod, firmly making his mark as one of the association's best two-way players. Career high 125 offensive rating to go with a 104 defensive rating. It's a career best net rating of 21. And an elite rim protector. He also established himself in that regard, 6.4 block rate, as the Thunder led the NBA in defensive efficiency for the second straight season. But getting Williams back to the level of play we saw from him in last year's run to the Larry O'Brien Trophy will be key for OKC in their attempt to repeat as NBA champs. And that's the reason why I mentioned what his per 36 and per 100 possession numbers are, because that's the level you're looking to see him get back to. Now, as I said, he suited up for only 33 games this season. As noted, he missed the first 19 games of the season, then played the next 24. Missed 10 more games, played the next 2. He averaged 25.5 over those 2. Missed 16 more, played 7 of the next 9, then sat out the final 2 games of the regular season. He logged only more than 28 minutes in a game just once since January 15th. Now, the bulk of those 33 games came between November 28th and January 17th. OKC went 17-7 in those games. And in that stretch, Williams averaged just 29.7 minutes per game. He scored 16.8 points per game. He shot 47% from the floor, a little over 50% on twos, shot just 30% from three on only 2.5 per game. He shot 83.3% from the line, but only got there 3.5 times. 4.8 rebounds, 5.6 assists. The only other decent stretch was that 7 out of 9 that he played from March 23rd through April 8th. OKC went 6-1 in that stretch. He averaged 25.9 minutes per game, 15.4 points, 50.6% from the floor, 55.9 on twos, 23.1 from beyond the arc, just 1.9 attempts per game. 85.2% from the line, just 3.9 attempts per game, 4.4 rebounds, 5.7 assists. Now, here's the thing. Both the eye test and the shooting numbers show that Williams, one of the better two-way players who was both all NBA and all defense last season, didn't look anything like that player even when he was available. The dramatic drop in his three-point shooting, the 29.9% percentage, was a career low. His 2.3 attempts per game was also a career low. That was down by more than 50% from last season when he averaged 4.9 attempts per game. It's a glaring issue that OKC needs Williams to correct, as his secondary scoring, he averaged 24.4 points, 21.4 points per game on a little under 45% from the floor, a little over 30% from beyond the arc, and almost 79% from the line for shooting splits on 26.3% usage rate in last year's postseason. And it was a big reason OKC won the title. His playmaking, 5.5 assists per game and 29.3 assist rate, both second to SGA in both of those numbers, has been consistent all season, and both are career best marks. But a return to the level of shot making and point scoring that OKC got from him en route to the NBA title last year, where his best games were a nice blend of on-ball offense, where he beat defenders as a pick-and-roll ball handler or as a downhill force in transition, or off-ball offense, where he played off SGA as a cutter, with all those scenarios getting him deep into the defense for rim attacks or mid-range jumpers, will go a long way to giving the Thunder a chance to repeat.
Jay,
Go ahead.
I wouldn't beat, if I were you, I wouldn't beat myself up on misspelling Jalen's name. There's only 14 NBA players with the name Jalen with some kind of variation.
That's why
yeah, but you know what? But considering that there are two of them on that team, and like I said, I talked about Jalen enough during last year's finals that I should not be making that mistake.
That's why shout out to the King.
Yeah, hey, look, shout out to the king of Jalen Rose, by the way.
Keep getting them checks. Keep getting those checks, Anthony. Again, that's why we call him J-Dub. We don't know our Jalen's anymore. We have to have nicknames.
There's too many of them.
You have to have nicknames for them. Okay. There's not a lot of De'Aaron Foxes in the league, ironically enough. There's only one. And that's why I'm picking him as my person to watch, other than obviously Victor Wembanyama. There you go. There's your French mention back and again, so I make up for the Eiffel Tower thing from before. So let's be sly and just talk about De'Aaron Fox for a second here. What's interesting with De'Aaron Fox is the fact that he had the postseason run back in 2022-23 with the Light the Beam Celtics. Second mention of the Light the Beam Celtics today after Mike Brown earlier.
Wow.
And he had 25 points in that series, but lost in 7 to the Golden State Warriors. That's really the only playoff experience De'Aaron has had. He's had some play-in experience, but he's never really made the playoffs until this moment. And you talk about going from the outhouse to the penthouse. Here it is. It is a team that is obviously built on Victor Wembanyama, the alien of the NBA, who is putting up numbers that's going to get him a top 2 or top 3 most valuable player nomination this season. But overall, De'Aaron Fox has been an interesting anomaly to the team. Now, you have guards out there. Stephon Castle has been just really, really good in his 2 seasons in there. He's a 16.7 point per game scorer and averaged 7 assists this year. He is on the edge of being an all-NBA player. If he's not third team, he is definitely in the running for that. Devin Vassell, 13.9 points per game. Dylan Harper, as a rookie, in his 69 games played, he had 11.8 points, and he is a guy who is going to get you a ton of minutes this offseason. Averages 22.6 a game. Nobody on this team averages more minutes than De'Aaron Fox does. That's only 31 minutes a game. partially because De'Aaron Fox is the most healthiest on the court, and partially because the San Antonio Spurs didn't need a lot of these wins and they were up in a lot of these games. This was the leap for them this season, but for them to make the next leap into the playoffs, De'Aaron Fox is going to have to do the job. And I think what's really, really interesting about De'Aaron Fox is this season, again, he was 18.5 points, 6.1 assists, 3.8 rebounds, 1.3 steals, shooting 48.8% from the field. He has the second best win shares per 48 minutes and third best VORP, value over replacement player, in his career. But he doesn't have to be the best scorer or best player on this team for a team that won almost 75%, over 75% of their games this year. They're 7-3 without De'Aaron Fox this year, but with Victor Wembanyama having some lingering injuries that might affect the first round playoff series against the Portland Trailblazers, should take care of the Trailblazers, but you want to make sure you have this team in full tilt for any series versus the Nuggets, Timberwolves, or eventually the Thunder. They have just a roster building masterclass. They were a 22-win team 2 years ago, a 60-win team now. Again, and De'Aaron Fox is really going to have to be the key. They got him last year really for this moment, for this playoff run and beyond. And the question is, can Fox do the job? It's still a mystery because, again, this team is Victor Wembanyama's team, but this team has some of the best guard play in the league. You can find you can't find too many better combinations of Fox, Castle, Vassell, and Harper, and a young combination in that. But I don't know. De'Aaron Fox being the veteran of this group is just very interesting. There's almost there's very little veteran experience on this team outside of Harrison Barnes, who I think is 61 years old. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't do the research on it. But I think however De'Aaron Fox goes is going to determine how easy the first round series is going to be against Portland and kind of all the firepower that they're going to need for what could be an NBA title run this postseason. We've seen how the San Antonio Spurs have taken the Oklahoma City Thunder to task this year. That's the team that matches up the best with them, bar none. We'll see how that would fare in a 7-game series if we get that far. But again, it's going to have to take 1 through 10 on a lot of these teams, especially the top 2 teams, but especially San Antonio.
I'll say this. Let me just jump in here for a second. The interesting thing to me is that we all know De'Aaron Fox can score the basketball. He did it at Kentucky. He's done it in the NBA. He averaged over 20 points a game pretty much every single year he was in Sacramento. Their one trip to the playoffs in 22-23, where they lost in 7 games. He averaged over 27 points a game. He had still also managed to hand out 7.7 assists. So you know he can carry a team if you need him to. So the question becomes, he's done a nice job of melding his game in and around Wemby and working hand in glove with Castle. I talked about the Spurs on our midseason show as the team to watch coming out of the West, and these guys have not disappointed me since the post All-Star break. This core that is coming together. Rabbi, you said they have one of the best young backcourts in the NBA. They'll all say my 2 guys in Philly are in that same argument.
Absolutely.
But this is going to make for an interesting. Last year, when we looked at the West, we were like, OKC was here, and we felt there was a definitive gap from 2 on down. So we didn't know if there was anybody who could seriously give them a challenge. I will tell you this, as young as they are, I don't think a meeting with, if it gets that far, and I'll tell you, it would make for a hell of a conference finals. If for them going against them, Wemby and the Spurs, with Fox and Castle going against the defending champs in the Western Conference Finals, that would make for a hell of a matchup. It'll be interesting to see if the relative lack of postseason experience for this San Antonio Spurs team comes back to bite them at some point. Barnes has plenty of playoff experience from his time in Golden State, but as you said, he's 61 years old.
Yes, 100%.
So and they don't have a lot of guys who have been there and done that in April, May, and June. So where does that come from, right? So Fox, who is going to be essentially be who's the next guy up to carry the load after, alongside and after Wembanyama, he's had one trip to the playoffs in all his time in the NBA. So we'll see how that goes. Lack of playoff experience can come back to bite you. So do they break the mold this year in San Antonio and that isn't an Achilles heel, or is this year's playoffs their learning experience before they take the next step and truly become title contenders next year?
I would say this. Number one, is it a bad sign for the Portland Trailblazers where they don't even have T-shirts to hand out to their fans? Because I don't think they even realized they were going to be a playoff team at some point this season until they actually became a playoff team. But yeah,
Nobody wants to be a playoff team in the West except for like 10 teams, and they were one of them. So if you want to be a playoff team, go ahead. You're in that.
but also, look at the Spurs. And by the way, let's say it for what it is. And I know people kind of poo-poo on the NBA Cup and the in-season tournament and all that, but that is kind of a small taste of big game situation with something on the line. And granted, it was money, but it was something to kind of at least get their beaks wet a little bit, or a taste of what they're going to see, maybe encounter when they have to go on a roll in some of these tougher environments. But the way they matched up against the Thunder this season, and the way they kind of played, in like any style the Thunder played, the Spurs can match them. They can play half court because they have the guys who can generate offense. They can play at the Wemby. They can play a slow down game, but they can play up tempo as well because Wemby's a 7-footer who can run and play point and set up his guys and set up his teammates. But when you look at Castle and Fox and all these other guys, just how athletic they are, that is a real big challenge that the Thunder had a hard time dealing with this season. Then we match him up with the Nuggets. Wemby is such a good defensive player that he's one of the few guys that Jokic can't shoot over because of his wingspan and length. And he's strong enough to keep Jokic from just bullying his way to the basket. So the Spurs are such an interesting team because of the makeup of how they were built, but how they just match up with any team in the Western Conference based on styles and based on the superstar that each team brings to the table. You bring Anthony Edwards, and you have the defenders that they kind of defend them on the basket, on the perimeter. The Lakers, obviously Luka and Austin Reeves are not healthy, but with LeBron, you can throw and mix and match guys against him, and then you just go list on and on. Even in the Eastern Conference, the Celtics, and we haven't really talked about them all that much. And I think
So much for a gap year, right, guys?
Yeah, so much for that gap year. But
I am still blown away by Jason Tatum's remarkable recovery from an Achilles injury. That's insane.
And the Celtics their first round matchup is a, I would call it get right series because Jason Tatum putting the points up, but that's something's not right. That explosiveness that we saw with Jason Tatum, it's not there yet, and he's sending for a lot of jump shots. And look, you can say a lot of things about how confident you feel, and the body language would be one thing, but the actions is another thing. And he does not look completely healthy. And shout out to my brother because I talked to him about this. He's a big Celtics fan. And by the way, if you're watching, see you on Tuesday night at Citi Field. But besides the point, if the Celtics are gonna do anything, this gotta be a Jaylen Brown led team.
Yes.
He's been leading
I think it's
season.
fine for that. It's fun. They're fine with that right now.
I think they are.
He's been leading them all season. He's got to be the head. He's got to be the head of the snake on this equation. And let Jason Tatum be the secondary guy because look, a major injury with the one Tatum suffered, it's mentally as much as anything physically that you have to deal with. And I just don't see him there right now. And this first round series is going to be a way to kind of really get him revved up.
Yep.
But what's going to be a really tough run back to the finals, whether it be the Knicks or the Hawks in round two. Certainly could be the Pistons, who is just going to knock him on his ass
He's counting my Sixers out without even a backward glance. Listen to this guy.
Look, if Joel Embiid would have been healthy in this series, I think it would be a much tougher series. But I just think the Celtics firepower is too much for even a guy like Tyrese Maxey, who I am a big fan of, and a healthy Paul George to overcome. And I don't know where the rest of the scoring to compensate for absence of Joel Embiid is going to come from with
Got
this Sixers
three.
team.
You got three big scorers on that lineup, by the
That's
way.
the thing.
That's the thing. You got three really good scorers who can go for
Right.
25.
And this is the thing is that Edgecombe has come such a long way because I got to tell you, the player he is now at the end of the season coming into this series, nobody saw him reaching this point. He carried the Sixers at certain points this season when Maxey was hurt without Embiid, while George was handling his suspension. The fact that these guys are all back, the fact that George is back and playing solid basketball, that Edgecombe has not hit the rookie wall, which has surprised the hell out of me, and Maxey being Maxey, they have a puncher's chance because the Celtics aren't a team that relies on a big in terms of running their offense through him. So they might be able to survive without Embiid. And does Embiid obviously takes them to a different level because when he's healthy, there are very few players in the league who can do what he can do at his size, at any size. So, and Philly is not going to let up for a second. So this is going to be a really good test to see where is Jason Tatum at in his recovery. And the fact that Jaylen Brown has taken over as the alpha puts a little bit less pressure on Tatum to have to try and essentially force the issue to carry this team, which we have seen him do in playoff series past, where he feels like it is all on him. He is the guy. He's not that guy this year. He can actually he doesn't have to be there. He can let Jaylen Brown handle the larger offensive load as he continues to ramp himself back up. Here's the scary thing. They are this good and he's not 100% yet. If he reaches anywhere close to 100% later on in the playoffs, if they're still around, look out.
By the way, I can't believe at one point I ever thought that Joe Mazzulla would have been a worse head coach than Ime Udoka because Joe Mazzulla has done wonders with this team. I think coach of the year. By the way, to switch it back to the initial team I was talking about before in San Antonio. What's interesting about San Antonio is that they remember it was a while ago because you brought it the NBA Cup. In a 2-week span, not even a 13-day span from December 13th to December 25th, they won 3 games against the Oklahoma City Thunder, beating them in the NBA Cup and then stunning them on the 23rd and 25th of December, winning a game by 20 and a game by 15. If that team is out there, good luck, NBA. I love watching these. This playoffs is going to be very interesting because there's a lot of new narratives to come into the fold. And the good news is when you're watching the NBA playoffs, no one's tanking, at least as far as I know.
You guys know. Apparently. Well, let's not go there.
Let's not go there, but I'm just saying.
You guys know, I mean, we talked about tanking at a couple of points during the NBA season on this show. And it is at its worst level that I can recall in all of my years, not just watching as a fan, but covering it with you guys. I can't recall a season where it has been this epically and glaringly obviously bad. And look, we all know that is we all know. And let's just be clear on one thing. Tanking is a front office decision. It is not a player decision. These guys play to win every time they step on the court because they're not on it's their own personal pride. They want to play well. And they also know that they're trying to put good games on tape, whether it's for another contract with this team or a new contract somewhere else. So the players themselves are not tanking. It is the front office that is mandating the tanking by laying down the law of who plays and who doesn't to the head coach. But I'll tell you this, it's why it makes the NBA regular season hard to stomach sometimes. You guys know this, even when the teams that we follow are playing well. The fact that there are going to be some nights where the opponent they're playing is just not going to be competitive, it makes watching an NBA regular season more of a slog than it should actually be. The NBA postseason, this is where you see NBA basketball as it was intended to be.
Hopefully.
And by the way, I would say this because I agree with all your points about tanking. I'm really getting aggravated with some of these old school NBA talking heads complaining about load management. And you are like, look, I'll be 43 next month. You gonna really sit there and tell me that there was never load management in the 80s and 90s? Because I know fondly, I remember Michael Jordan basically sitting and drinking.
I'm gonna mute you if you continue mentioning
No,
Michael Jordan for more than 2
hold on now.
minutes.
Hold on now. This is a version of load management in the 90s with the Bulls in particular, because the Bulls will always have their playoff seeding and home court locked up of like 3 games or something like that left in the season. Even Mike Greenberg on ESPN has said this before.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan would start a game, play maybe 5-10 minutes, and then he'll spend the next 3 quarters at the end of the bench joking around with his teammates, drinking Gatorade, because Phil Jackson's smart. I'm not going to get my best player hurt in game 81 or 82.
By the way, that's not load management. That's resting. That's legitimate resting for the postseason.
But that is a version of load management.
I know, but I'm just not during the season, though. That's literally
it's a difference between like hockey. You see a healthy scratch. And the guy is healthy to play, but you just scratch him last minute. Or what Brad Popovich has done in his days with the Spurs, like Tim Duncan can't play because he's just too old. That's just being ridiculous.
Old, yes, it's the old joke.
But I'm just saying, like I've seen play, like we've seen load management in the 80s and 90s where guys would just start a game, but play a handful of minutes and then sit out the rest of the game when the game didn't mean anything because you didn't want your guys hurt. That is load management, no matter how much people want to try to sugarcoat it or move the goalposts, or if you're Charles Barkley, who, for whatever reason, always thinks nothing happened in his time as a player.
Yeah,
Charles. Or good teams, so we got bad press. Even though Shaq is sitting 20 feet from him, and him and Kobe always 47 win championships. I know, but I'm just saying.
I feel you, and we could go on about this all night, but we got to stop at some point.
and this would be that moment. So enjoy the NBA playoffs, and if you can, watch them outside. But don't you? Too nice out for podcasting.
This is why you're my co-host, because someone got to reel me in when I get started. Okay,
it's like the Muppet Show hook immediately going in there. Too nice out there for podcasting, guys. Just go outside. For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, I'm Stephen Rabinowitz. And oh crap, I probably should take my own advice considering all of the podcasting things I've done over the past few weeks. Damn it. Just a note, next Thursday, it's our NFL draft show with this crew and our friend Joe Tufaro. Join us then. Before you go outside, I'm telling you to stay inside. And check out our Facebook.com/OnTheSportsLines page, YouTube.com/OnTheSportsLines if you want to see our beautiful faces on demand. And Jay, do the honors.
Our Twitter handle is @ONTH SportsLines, where you'll find a link to each new show, like tonight's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out. This week, I posted a link to a story by Zach Harper, NBA writer for The Athletic, where he talks about the NBA 65-game rule as it pertains to the regular season awards. Now, sorry, not sorry, Adam Silver, but I've never been a fan of this rule, especially as it's not consistent across all of the awards. And like Harper, I'm not a fan of the appeals process with its extraordinary circumstance challenge. As Harper shows, the entire thing is broken, largely due to a bunch of loopholes, and is in dire need of change. It's a well put together piece and is worth the read for any and all NBA fans.
Isn't it funny how immediately we thought, okay, now we have some motivation, that immediately it's like, what the hell is going on here? What just happened? It's amazing how the circle of life works. Okay, back next Thursday. It's our NFL draft show again. Keep us side by side while you watch the 2026 NFL draft. And I actually now have written audio evidence and video evidence of me making a bad mock draft. You can check that on all of my pages, as they all will be dropped by this time next week. All right. Until then, See you in 6 days. Good night.
Good night,
Good night,
everybody.
everyone.